Welcome to an episode of the Sinclair Sports Update. My name is Laith Sinclair. I'm pleased to be joined by David Kelly. He is the sports director at Wildcats Radio 1290. David, thank you so much for being here.
Lance, appreciate you having me.
First question is your mom was a TV reporter, and your dad was a Hall of Fame running back, Leroy Kelly, for the Browns. So, what kind of influence did they have on your career?
Well, anytime you grow up in a family of professional sports athletes like I did, that's going to have an influence. Not only did my father play 10 years in the National Football League and is in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, but his brother, my uncle, his younger brother, played 13 years of Major League Baseball. And I probably grew up more around that just because my uncle's career lasted longer, went into my teen years. So I kind of grew up going to big league games and having a relative down there on the field and being around locker rooms and that kind of thing. So you're around sports in a realm maybe growing up that a lot of kids are not in it. And then really, my mom got into it, but I could probably point back to my grandmother's really kind of being the impetus of why I thought I might want to get into broadcasting because they both loved baseball. My mom's mom and my dad's mom, and they would sit on the porches in the summertime, whether I was in Cleveland with my mother's mom or whether I was in Philadelphia with my dad's mom. They would like love to sit on the porch in the summertime and listen to baseball on the radio.
That's awesome. That's what I love about sports is it builds you can build relationships. How does working in television compare to working in radio since you have experience in both?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think radio lends a little bit more to conversation, obviously, because it's a longer format. It's shows are generally 3 hours versus television, where you're really on only on the air, at least in a local sports format for maybe 3 minutes. I mean, obviously, you can get up to different levels to where you can connect, but even there's very few 3 hour television sports shows. I mean that where you can kind of connect with the audience. Even your talk back or talking head shows are probably only going to be about an hour, and even then you're not necessarily interacting with an audience. It's more the talking heads talking with each other and other analysts. Radio is definitely easier to produce than television. There's a lot that goes into producing 3 minutes of television. I often tell people, it may take an entire 6 to 8 hours just to produce that 3 minutes because maybe you're at an event. And you have to shoot that event, and then you might go into another event. You might shoot that event, and then you have to come back and you have to edit
Right.
all of that tape together to find the few pieces of highlights or video that you're going to use for your segment. And then there's a lot of graphics involved, all those lower thirds with names and scrolls and all of that you see. Those have to be put in to your rundown.
Your mom, she was a reporter on television. What kind of advice has she given you throughout your career?
Well, I think for her, it was just, be you, be who you are. Ask questions. I mean, question asking is what this business is all about. You have to see things from your perspective. You have to ask questions from your perspective. So always be engaged in the question asking process, whether that's a one-on-one interview, whether you're in a press conference. Make sure that people are seeing it, that your listeners and your readers or your watchers are seeing it from your perspective. Take their questions in. I often like to try to, get fans to give me, what do you think is happening? Tell me what you want to know. I'm your conduit. You can't be in that room with Tommy Lloyd. You can't be in that room with Brent Brennan, but I can. What's the question you would ask them?
I got a story back in 2017 on television about a high school women's basketball coach named Mike Argraves. He had just passed away, and you did a tribute story. What is it like when you learn about? Obviously, the main thing is sports, but when you get to do a story about something that's much deeper than sports,
Yeah, that was an interesting story because I did that initially. That was not supposed to be a post mortem story. It was in December, and I remember I'd heard about what Mike was doing over at Santa Rita High School, and I knew he was sick. And so I'd gone over there to interview him just about his life and his career and coaching and all of that. And it was right before Christmas break. And I remember I did this story and I was going to run it when I got back from my Christmas vacation. And then he passed away while I was gone. So it became a postmortem story kind of after the fact. And so, I mean, those are the stories that resonate, I think, with people.
Again, for those just joining, this is the Sinclair Sports Update. My name is Lath, and I'm here with David Kelly, the sports director at Wildcats Radio 1290. We're talking about his career. What you've been all over the place in your career. You've been in Tennessee. You've been in Bakersfield, California, Cleveland. What was it that got you to Tucson?
Interesting story. I was working in Memphis at the time doing professional baseball there with the Cardinals AAA club, and I ended up playing some softball in the off season. Wasn't not a big softball fan. I prefer hardball baseball. And but a guy I met, local sports anchor, was putting together a team, and I didn't have any friends because I literally got there just as the season was starting. And then it's like 5 months of baseball, and now I've got all this time on my hands. So I was like, well, I need some friends here. So let me jump on this softball team, and maybe I'll make a few friends. And two of the guys I met worked in corporate partnerships for the University of Memphis athletic department, and they ended up coming out here to work at the U of A. And there was an opportunity that I saw that might be coming open at the U of A when the Tucson Sidewinders, the Diamondbacks AAA team, was leaving because I knew their broadcaster. I worked with, he worked with him, knew him from my time in AAA, and I knew he was leaving the market to follow the baseball team to Reno. So I called up my guys and I said, "Hey, are you going to be replacing him? I know he does some work with U of A. Is that position going to be open?" Because I had left the baseball team at that point, and they were like, "Well, yeah, we were just starting to talk about that. Is that something you'd be interested in?" And I was, being a Pac-12 kid or Pac-10 kid at the time, I said, "Yeah, I've always been interested in coming back and covering college sports. It's something I had not really done at that point in my career, so that's kind of how it all worked out."
I gotta brag about you a little bit.
Mm.
Um, you have won 5 AP First Place awards. You've won Best Spot on Television. What did it mean that first time to get an award?
It was pretty cool. That was my first job, little town called Porterville, up in Porterville, California, KTIP radio, and we entered into the small market category for sports, and we were able to get the win. And I worked with a lot of high school kids in that market, and one of my high school kids wanted to get into the business. He was always hanging around the station, and he's like, "Can I go with you to that event?" It was up in Northern California somewhere, and I was driving up there. I was like, "Cool, yeah, you want to go with me?" And he ended up getting into the business and working in radio for a number of years before becoming a police officer. And it was cool. He was here. He came through Tucson last year and went to a U of A basketball game, and we met up the night before. And he pulls out this picture. He still had the picture that we took that night at the event when we got our award. Everybody gets their awards and they take pictures, and he still had the picture that we took that night.
Again, we're here with David Kelly, sports director at Wildcats 1290, Radio 1290. David, what does it mean to be a good sportscaster?
What does it mean to be a good sportscaster? Well, you need to be able to connect with people. You need to be able Your work needs to be able to connect with people, and that doesn't necessarily mean they have to like you. I mean, there's a lot of people that don't like me in this market, and that's fine. I've always been one of those guys that's tried to uh, push people's buttons. To get a reaction, whether that was in the locker room. I haven't always been the most popular person in locker rooms I've covered because I ask the tough questions. And there's a lot of people that don't want to ask the tough questions. And that's fine. I mean, everybody's going to choose their avenue down this business. Again, I go back to what I said about my mom. My mom always said, don't be afraid to ask the tough questions.
David Kelly, thank you so much for being here with me today and talking about sportscasting.
Lath, appreciate it. Good luck with your career.
Appreciate it. You're listening to the Sinclair Sports Update. I'm Lath Sinclair.